Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield here with you guys. We got a great show coming up. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Fun one coming up today. Our buddy Marshall Newhouse, longtime NFL veteran offensive tackle, going to stop by and help us break down the weekend in Week 3. Marty Smith, ESPN college football reporter, going to stop by also in the second hour and take a look back at a wild weekend that we saw going on there. But, Dad, plenty to dive into in football. Andy Dalton is leading the Ginger Revolution alongside Sam Darnold, who I feel like with the beard gets somewhat of credit in there. We'll, I think, figure out his bona fides as we go forward on that end. But, Jesse, you don't think Sam Darnold qualifies as a ginger?
No way. Sam Darnold's not a ginger.
I mean, he's got the ginger beard that shows up at times, I feel like.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't know what. He's like a strawberry blonde, okay?
That
Andy
beard
Dalton
is flaming red.
No, Andy Dalton
is Andy Dalton's hair color.
Andy Dalton is Ron Weasley ginger. You got to be Ron Weasley out here in order to qualify as a ginger. I'm sorry. Your little strawberry blonde beard doesn't count.
Wow, I don't know. Listen, I'm a simple man. I'm simple folk. I think Sam Darnold's a ginger. That's just me.
From his head or his beard? Because he could just simply not have facial hair, and then what is he?
And then I mean, he's still bordering on ginger.
Yeah.
No way. You guys are crazy.
You know what? We're off and running early in the show at GoJo and Golic on Twitter. Does Sam Darnold count as a redhead as we now begin to assess the lot of ginger quarterbacks that began the season as backups, making a name for themselves already through week 3? We will put a pin in that and get to that very important debate. Dad, after we get through what we saw on Sunday Night Football last night, you were on the road calling this for Westwood One in Atlanta as the Kansas City Chiefs managed to pull one out, 22-17 win that they get on the road in a game that felt close to being really good and was never quite able to push itself over the goal line. Dad, we were talking before the show, long sustained drives that didn't end in the scores that we expected, a couple of head scratcher throws from Patrick Mahomes, some miscommunication with him and the wide receivers, but ultimately, and I'm sure warming your heart, a defensive led effort that ultimately put this thing on ice for them.
Yeah, it was a wild game. I mean, Kansas City's first drive was 17 plays and it ended with an interception. And later in the game, when Atlanta needed a drive, they had 2 drives to try and take the lead. They had a 15-play drive that ended on down. So it was a weird game. Pat Mahomes not happy after the game about their offense. Their offense really hasn't produced well, but it's kind of like last year where the defense kind of led the way. And both offense and defensively, they were Midland stats-wise in a 2-game sample. But this was the defense that stepped up and just muted the Atlanta Falcons running attack, which was kind of muted in week 1, broke open in week 2 for over 150 yards, and then really didn't get any footing. Bijan Robinson averaging, not even 2 yards a carry. And they were going to the end first. I didn't like the last call, 4th down and a half a yard, and they ran it wide. I mean, they were Atlanta was down in the red zone, deep in the red zone. They needed a touchdown because they eschewed the field goal that the drive before, which I was okay with. They went for on fourth down. They didn't get it, and they kept kind of Kansas City down, pinned back, and could have got good field position, because if they were to kick that field goal, they would have been a field goal away from winning. And you fast forward, getting the ball in field goal range may have been the way. But I didn't have a problem with them going for it on the first time they lost it on the set of downs. But that 4th and half a yard, I just Mike, I don't like it. I mean, I know you load up the lines, the defense is loaded up, but you're so, I think, just so much better going straight ahead than trying to go east and west and then turn it up. Unfortunately, Atlanta is no threat of a quarterback sneak with Kirk Cousins in there. I mean, he won't even take off and run, and he had a great chance to run during the game at one point. So I just did not like that last play call.
Yeah, I think with that, Dad, too, I thought the same thing. QB sneak could be on the menu, but your quarterback's lack of mobility. And also at that point in the game, you were down your starting center, Drew Dahlman, who went down with what looked like an ankle injury during the course of that game. Kind of a theme for the weekend, unfortunately, of offensive linemen on teams that we had seen have success in the NFC South go down in a way that changes some of the outcome. So I'm with you. I didn't like the play call there, that power T backfield that everyone loved after Penn State did it a couple of seasons ago, not bearing the fruit that you wanted in that situation. And Dad, I think you mentioned Kirk Cousins and mobility as we try and figure out why the Chiefs were able to do this. Kirk Cousins helps lead that touchdown drive at the end of primetime game last week and help get them to win in Philadelphia, and now comes out and has the same opportunity here. And I think the difference that we saw with this this Kansas City Chiefs defense, Dad, Spags just said, all right, we know you can't go anywhere else but right where you're standing, and so we're going to try and rattle your bones in the pocket. Kirk Cousins, for 3 straight weeks, only even attempts one pass outside of the tackle box in this game. He's locked in where his feet are at this point, and while he looked better than he did week 1, Dad, it's still sending the signal up to a D coordinator who we know, one of the best in the business, and just decided to throw hammers at him all night.
Yeah, there was a drive too where Kirk Cousins stepped up and could have run for a first down and just chose not to, chose to throw it. It was an incomplete pass, and there's just no threat. Not like if people are screaming for Michael Penix, that Michael Penix is a big a rushing quarterback either. But yeah, he's really a stationary quarterback. And one of the reasons Spags is dialing up blitzes is the Kansas City Chiefs came into the game second to last in quarterback pressures, only to be outdone by the Atlanta Falcons, who were worst in the league in quarterback pressures coming into the game. So Spags was dialing it up, doing the crossing the linebackers and the A gaps, bringing rushers off the edge, cornerbacks and safeties off the edge. He wanted to put pressure on Cousins because Cousins is not mobile at all, and he has to get rid of the ball quick. Routes weren't able to develop downfield. And it was and they could not get a running game going. You mentioned Drew Dahlman, the center, went out with an ankle. Caleb McGarry went out earlier with a knee. Yeah. So they had a backup center and a backup right tackle. So you could probably see why the rushing attack wouldn't work.
Yeah, I think this is one of those weekends where the reasoning behind a lot of the lack of production for teams like Atlanta and teams like New Orleans, as we'll talk about the expanded view of the NFC South, is just, hey, the O-line's got compromised a little bit. New Orleans had 2 offensive linemen go down, one leave the game in center Eric McCoy, and then another in Cesar Ruiz. Their guard go down banged up in that. Same with Atlanta, one of the better run-blocking offensive lines in the NFL, but that group gets cracked, and all of a sudden life gets difficult there. And you did mention the pressure on Kirk Cousins, Dad. Kirk Cousins' yards per attempt dropped from 10.8 without the blitz in this game to 4.4 with the blitz. So it definitely sped up and affected his process, even for a team where, Dad, you look and watch and you see, hey, Drake London's making the star turn that a lot of people expected. Came up with some big plays for them over the course of last night. Bijan Robinson has the juice to be incredibly effective. You see the talent on display, just can't get effective long enough with that line up front. And so with Atlanta, I still think if they're able to get healthy up front and Kirk Cousins keeps progressing, this is a team in an offense that can be effective long term. But last night they ran into the worst case scenario defensively with a very frustrated Steve Spagnuolo taking it out on them.
Yeah. Frustrated Spagnuolo, frustrated Chris Jones, who had just a horrible roughing the quarterback call on him after he was hit in the face twice by Jake Matthews and then basically set the quarterback down gently and got a roughing the passer. And he was so hot after that play. The Chiefs were hurting themselves with penalties, keeping Atlanta drives alive. But the Chiefs are 3-0 for the first time, starting out 3-0 for the first time since 2020. But Patrick Mahomes, and listen, they're 3-0, and in pro sports, that's all that matters is the W's and the L's, and they have all W's behind their name. But Pat Mahomes just looked off. Even his completions had wide receivers kind of scrambling to get the ball. They were low. They were behind him. They were misses. They were a late pass on the Justin Simmons interception in the end zone. He threw the ball late a couple of times. By the way, that was Simmons' 6th interception. Justin Simmons used to play for Denver and played against Pat Mahomes twice a year. That's his 6th interception against Patrick Mahomes. Nobody else has more than 2 against Mahomes. So, but Pat has just been off. Travis Kelce, not over, I think, 34 or 39 yards receiving in any game this year. He has kind of been used as a decoy. He'll run the middle of the field and take backers with him, and they'll run a crossing route right underneath him, normally for Rashee Rice catching the ball in between the numbers and just taking off and going. So Rashee Rice had 15 targets in the first 2 games. Combined, he had 14 targets last night. He is by far the main man to go to.
No, he has. He's become the number 1 option on their offense right now. Did a lot of his damage and yards after the catch last night. And yeah, Dad, with the Chiefs trying to figure out this team because they're 3-0, but we saw last year, right? The Eagles got off to a hot start that we all smelled and looked and said, hey, this doesn't feel sustainable the way that they're winning. It doesn't look and feel as good as the year before. Now, with the Chiefs, we've got the benefit of having seen what last year looked and felt like, where they were 2-1 to start the season last year. They had the loss on opening night to the Lions, but then rattled off 2 wins after that, including a one where they put up a 40-burger. But you still look at this team and understand, and I think why they get the benefit of the doubt, much to the frustration of many, is just because with Travis Kelce, we've seen him turn it on late in the season and in the postseason when it actually matters. With the Chiefs, we have seen them work out some of the new parts of their roster. You saw late in the game that 3-and-out before the Falcons had a chance to win the dang thing before that drive that ultimately led to the failed 4th down. You saw it looked like Patrick Mahomes had 2 wide receivers right open, and then Xavier Worthy stops running as Pat Mahomes throws it out in front of him, and what looks like a clear communication between veteran quarterback and rookie wide receiver. And so you account for those things with this team, understanding that we've seen in the past with players that aren't even on this roster anymore, like Kadarius Toney, they find a way to get the best out of them for the moments that ultimately matter. And I think when you see, hey, the way the rushing attack was still able to work, despite the fact that you had Carson Steele in there instead of your usual starter and Isaiah Pacheco. And then defensively, while the group, Chris Jones, only one pressure in this game on 28 pass rush snaps. You mentioned it hasn't been great for them. They stepped up in the biggest moments there with a group that's learning how to live without L'Jarius Sneed on the back end. We, I think, give them a lot more benefit of the doubt just because we know what they've done in the past. And so it's a little easier to excuse it away in the first quarter of the season.
Oh, yeah. And Patrick Mahomes being upset with the way the defense played last year, and they still won the Super Bowl. So, yeah, they have some flaws, but they're still pulling out wins. And, it was the first game with life without Isaiah Pacheco for a bit. Carson Steele ends up getting, he and Samaje Perine, I think at halftime, both had 6 carries, but they decided to go with Carson Steele as kind of the hammer. He ended up with 17 carries for 72 yards, averaged over 4 yards a carry. Perine was in more on the passing downs, had a few receptions, and just had the 6 runs, but he was more of the receiving guy. So that's life without Isaiah Pacheco. They still ran the ball, 32 times and 39 passes. So it was pretty evenly split, even without their main starting running back.
It was. And so they found a way to manufacture it there. And it's kind of what we talk about with this Chiefs team. And so I think I'm not going to raise much concern. They found a way to get a win. It may not have looked pretty, and the offense may not be doing the high-flying stuff that we wanted them to do or expected them to do coming in this season. As we lauded all the offseason moves, we still haven't seen any Hollywood Brown introduced into this lineup that could change things. And so I think all things considered with these two groups, that part, going to say incomplete right now. For the Falcons and the rest of the NFC South, I do think a lot of this is rooted in the poor timing of injuries. And now that we've kind of got the Panthers inserted back into this as teams that are at least now somewhat interesting, I start to look around at the rest of this group that we were so high on coming off the first 2 weeks of the season, where the New Orleans Saints come out and look like the best offense in the league. Kirk Cousins gets the primetime win. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers start off hot out the gate with Baker Mayfield and an offense that won the division last year. And now Andy Dalton comes riding in to save the Panthers from David Tepper and the mismanagement of this organization. I know we were all hesitant to give New Orleans, Tampa Bay, the kind of credit of being contenders. And then it's immediately rewarded our skepticism this week with two teams that both spit the bit in a real way, especially, Tampa. I mean, again, rooted in injury, but losing like that to Bo Nix and that Denver offense, it jarred a lot of people and is going to go a long way. I always say trust is gained in drops and lost in buckets. And the NFC South kicked over the bucket in a big-time way yesterday and is going to have to recoup all of that. Jesse, what I wanted to know from Dad, and he's experiencing some technical difficulties, so hopefully we'll get him back soon, is he was in the building in Atlanta for what felt like a weird, at work when everyone wants a raise and the boss just throws a Christmas party or like a pizza party instead.
A pizza party where the pizza's cut into tiny little pieces, like one piece is 3 pieces.
Yeah, just the little tiny inefficient pizza party. That's what it felt like yesterday for the Falcons as Arthur Blank inducted himself into the Ring of Honor for the Falcons in one of the weirdest tweets. I saw Adam Schefter tweet this going into the weekend about how Arthur Blank was getting ready to be inducted into the Ring of Honor as if that was something he did not have control over, and that as part of the celebration, there would be free hot dogs, chips, and fountain sodas for the people attending the games in Atlanta. Now, Atlanta's one of those stadiums where one of the good parts of their shtick is the stadium food fare there is cheaper than a lot of other places you'll get. That's something that they wanted to do. But Jesse, where are you at on the idea of inducting yourself into your own Ring of Honor? This seemed profoundly sad to me.
Yeah, it's absolutely bizarre. It would be like naming yourself Employee of the Month at a company that you own. Like, what do you mean you're doing that? Totally bizarre move by him, and I feel like Twitter agreed with everyone, but it was so weird to see him standing there like in his jacket, like all dressed up, all nice, and you're just like, you're literally in charge of this. Like, this was your entire idea. Like,
again, we showed the graphic of it, but the tweet from Adam Schefter that reads like Falcons PR trying to hype this up. Various Falcons officials said this past week that they believe this is the most significant and important game at Atlanta's Mercedes-Benz Stadium for their franchise since it opened in 2017. Coming off a memorable Monday night win in Philadelphia, the 1-1 Falcons will be hosting the defending Super Bowl champs on a night where Arthur Blank will be inducted into the stadium's Ring of Honor, and fans will be given free hot dogs, potato chips, and saw who in the Falcons PR thought having that out was a good idea. Dad, you were there. What was this like? Because this to me, and I said to Jesse, sounded so impossibly sad.
But also, did you see that Joey Chestnut was there too? For the hot dogs, I guess?
Had a couple of minutes to eat hot dogs. Samuel L. Jackson introduced Arthur Blank. And every fan could get 2 hot dogs and 2 bags of chips and free Coca-Cola all night.
That move was pretty cool. The move of actually putting yourself in the Ring of Honor, something that we can debate for another day. But coming up next, if we're going to talk about owners who will put themselves in their own Ring of Honor, let's figure out what the hell Jerry Jones is talking about with this Dallas Cowboys squad next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. And Jerry Jones is in the news again. And no, I am not talking about that Insta Live. He offered some insight into the rumors of the offseason courtship of Ravens running back Derrick Henry and the Cowboys. Now, he said he couldn't afford Derrick Henry. He was like, why do you not move into a mansion? Because you can't afford it. That was his little metaphor. It was so cute. After watching him run all over Dallas's defense, though, he probably wishes he could have made it work, fellas. What do you think? Seems like, what was it, a 2-year, $16 million contract that Henry signed with the Ravens? So apparently Jerry and his contracts just couldn't afford it.
With $9 million guaranteed. Shout out to the folks at Spot Track over on Twitter who do the great job of showing off all the contract information and numbers for a lot of the NFL deals. Got a little spicy this morning when they tweeted that, yes, the Cowboys couldn't afford, in quotes, Derrick Henry's $9 million guarantee because they owe their third quarterback, Trey Lance, over $5 million guaranteed this year. And they paid Dak Prescott a $5 million bonus in March while his negotiations stalled there. So, Dad, all things infinitely under their control and all decisions that Jerry Jones controls himself, if you want to believe him at all, which you shouldn't at this point, because if he's got a well-worn track record of just spitting you whatever he needs to get out of that situation.
Listen, that just goes to say that's poor management of the team. You don't have a running game. You brought back Zeke Elliott, who is not going to carry a rushing attack. You need a rushing attack, and you're saying you can't afford the position that has the least hit on a salary cap outside of kickers. That's poor cap management. So when he's telling that, he's telling on himself that they did not manage it correctly, and they've gone into the season basically throwing away any kind of rushing attack.
This game was sort of weird because that was the headline coming off it, which in a weird way, I'm sure Jerry loves, because that's the kind of thing that Jerry Jones at this point in his career seems to value over the actual product on the field, is making sure that people are talking about him on Monday mornings across America. So mission accomplished, Jerry, when it comes to this with in this case, as we're talking about him, the running back in Derrick Henry that ran all over you, 25 carries for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 28-25 win, Dad, that almost fell into one of the most diabolical traps known to mankind, which seems to be the Ravens having any kind of fourth quarter lead. I saw Ben Solak over at ESPN tweet this out, that over the last 2 years with Lamar Jackson as a starter, the Ravens have lost 7 regular season games. And in all 7 of those regular season games, they have had at least a win probability in the fourth quarter of over 75%. We've talked about the blown leads that we've seen in the past, and Dad, they were fixing to do it again. I didn't think you could even recover onside kicks with the new rules in the modern NFL, where you've got to be down and it's got to be in the fourth quarter, and you got to tell everybody in the building that you're going to onside kick. And Dallas is able to do it, and all of a sudden, Dak Prescott finds the way to will this offense towards almost victory at the end of this game here. Does the way this game ended, a late Cowboys rally to make the score look somewhat respectable, change the way that you feel about either team coming off this game, Dad?
No, because again, it's pro sports, so you get the W. There's a sample size of Baltimore. They need to fix this problem of becoming lax, in this case with a 28-6 lead going to the fourth quarter, and having a play be successful against them that's the least successful play in the history of the NFL, the friggin' onside kick. So they just take their foot off the gas. I mean, without question. But at least they got the W. For Dallas, Mike, let me tell you, as a former defensive lineman, I would rather have a offense pass for 500 yards on me than run for 274 yards, because that means you are just getting flat out punched in the face. Not only did they give up 274 yards rushing, 161 of those yards came before contact.
Yeah.
So that freight train, Derrick Henry, is on the second or third level before he's getting touched. How about that nightmarish fuel for DBs around the league to see this train running down the tracks at you, not being slowed down at all? We talked about the Dallas rush defense and how bad it was, and it got absolutely aired out. That you almost can't be beat a worse way as a defense than to just get physically manhandled on the run. And you had Micah Parsons after the game questioning everyone trying to be a Superman and just not making, just play your position. They tend to spout off a little bit when things aren't going well.
They're a bad defense. They're a bad defense right now. It's gotten their ass kicked 2 straight games. And until further notice, this is, Dad, you know this, like, now that this is on tape, this is all they can expect for the future until further notice, until this defense either personnel-wise or schematically decides to try and do something about it. And even then, Dad, You look at what they did in this game, like, the only two ways to fix stopping the run are either to have bigger, better run stoppers personnel-wise or to add more numbers to the box. And Derrick Henry in this game, 10 carries for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns when facing 8 or more defenders in the box. You stacked it as much as you wanted to, and it still didn't matter with this guy. Him, Lamar Jackson, there were 3 rushers in this game, Dad, for the Ravens that had at least 5 rushing attempts and averaged more than 6 yards a carry. They were getting it however they wanted in this game. And so any other analysis of the Dallas Cowboys isn't necessary. It really isn't. Like, offensively, they can't run the ball. Dak Prescott still does a bunch of really impressive things in the passing game when you give him enough opportunities and cracks at it. Tyler Guyton, your rookie left tackle, struggled mightily in this game and has through the first 3 weeks of the season. And none of it matters because on the other side, you're getting punched in the face over and over again, and there seems to be nothing they can do about it.
No, I mean, people will sit there and talk about scheme. You mentioned the 2 things you can do. Beat your guy one-on-one. I've always said this when you talk about schemes. At the end of the day, it's a bunch of one-on-ones out there. And you got to beat the man in front of you and get off the block. As a defender, you can't trade 1 for 1. You have to get off the block and make the tackle. And if you can't do that, you can try run stunts to not have to take somebody on one-on-one. You could try loading the box, but you just gave the numbers of they did load the box and the numbers that Derrick Henry still got. But if you load the box, then you're susceptible to the pass. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't when you're getting run on. When you're getting run on, all things are possible on the offensive side of the ball. It is by far, again, as a former defender, the worst way you can get beat is to get run over. They got run over even when they had loaded boxes. They had 0 answers.
Yeah, and so, Dad, this is one where I'm probably going to have to put my hand up and admit I was wrong. The Dallas Cowboys, in no way, shape, or form, resemble a contender right now. They've got an offense that can get hot, and I'm sure Dak Prescott and those guys will be more in sync for more games and help win them a bunch of games that they otherwise wouldn't. This defense, I'm sure, against opponents that aren't as adept at running the ball or against teams that show up with an injured offensive line are going to be able to get pressure, and we'll get excited for a little bit. But at the end of the day, in the places that matter, this is a fundamentally flawed football team that I don't think has the means to address those flaws before the end of the season on their roster right now. And so Dallas is going to be talked about a lot, but really unfun to talk about because I feel like we know the truth about them already. For Baltimore, at the very least, Dad, I can look at this and go, hey, all right, you almost gave it up at the end, but you didn't against a team and a quarterback in Dak Prescott that are very good. The quarterback, I should say, not the team. And you managed to stop that at the end. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry both made some big plays on that final drive to help put this thing on ice. You did run to finish the game in a way that we had been begging you to over the first couple of games of the season. And Dad, for me, as much as anything, Christ almighty, look what happened when you don't rotate offensive linemen all the time during this game. You went out there with the same starting 5, Ronnie Stanley at tackle on one side, Patrick McCarry at tackle on the other, and then Daniel Fa'alele and Andrew Voorhees surrounding Tyler Linderbaum in the center. And they didn't rotate guys in and out. They didn't try and get Roger Rosengarten in, their rookie, or do any of the other stuff we've seen the Ravens historically do. And all of a sudden, this ground game actually had time to get some continuity going. My God, I'm going to pretend to be shocked.
And as far as Baltimore in the AFC North, we talked about that as maybe being the best division in football. Boy, we need to reassess that. Cleveland with another loss and not looking good. Cincinnati still hasn't gotten off the schneid. They play Washington tonight, and Pittsburgh is sitting there at 3-0. So it seems like a 2-team race. And again, it's just 3 games in, and Cincy is historically, since Zach Taylor's been there, been bad in the first 2 games. So let's see if they can start to turn the corner. They should against Washington, which we'll talk about later. So it still potentially could be a 3-team division.
Yeah, I'm not ready to write Cincinnati off yet. I do feel pretty ready to write the Cleveland Browns off right now.
Yes.
The offense still looks like it's in shambles, as we talked about. That offensive line foundation in front of a struggling Deshaun Watson just hasn't been there. Maybe Nick Chubb, if and when he comes back, can be a guy that's some sort of catalyst. And then defensively, Dad, you've got Myles Garrett getting MRIs on his feet now, apparently, with some issues that he's dealing with there. And that defense has so many great parts. We talked about it. That's a Super Bowl caliber defense when it's healthy. But even with all the great parts and Denzel Ward and those guys in the back end of that defense, it's like, man, when you take away the reigning defensive player of the year off that group and make him less effective, like we saw down the back half of last season when his shoulder was injured, it's a really different equation.
Yeah, and it seems like the O-line is the mash unit of the entire NFL, with Cleveland right up there as well. With the injuries they've had and the nicks on the offensive line. So that's certainly not helping the situation. Not having Nick Chubb is not helping the situation. Deshaun Watson not being what Deshaun Watson was, even though he didn't throw a pick in this game and did throw 2 touchdowns. Yeah, they're a hurting bunch, no doubt about it.
Yep, that team looked incredibly out of sorts. And so, Dad, I think the Steelers kind of the story of the early portion of this season. Yep. And I thought it was interesting. We talked about Travis Kelce and his lack of success last night. Part of that I'm willing to attribute to some extent is, hey, that Falcons safety room, pretty damn good. You go back and look at the Steelers passing chart week 1, and while Arthur Smith and Justin Fields on their own both were kind of allergic to the middle of the field to begin with, they basically planted their flag in the middle, Atlanta, on defense and said, you shall not pass. Justin Fields' passing chart from that game looks like a parting of the Red Sea. You go to yesterday, Dad, and now all of a sudden, if this is going to be the version of Justin Fields that we get, and this is why a lot of people advocated to say, hey, he's the one you should start because there's upside here. And we saw, Dad, in the game yesterday for them, Justin Fields and Arthur Smith both feeling compelled to explore the space in the middle of the field and actually make that a part of their passing attack, a touchdown thrown there, as they get a win over a Chargers team that, listen, Justin Herbert going down with the ankle injury in that game, the biggest story. He came in with a high ankle sprain, tried to play through it, and then took a hit that jarred that loose and jarred him out of the game. And so that goes a long way in stopping this. Certainly TJ Watt and what we saw him in that defense do against a Chargers team that had been a good rushing outfit is a big factor in that. But I do think on the other side right now, Dad, you're starting to see Justin Fields put some things together on this offense that I think, A, shut the door on Russell Wilson coming back as the starter, unless there's some sort of injury to Justin Fields right now, but B, also start to show us some hints of what we all thought might be possible for a young, very talented player, maybe getting in better circumstances than what we saw for him in Chicago.
Yeah, and he did this with his arm, not his legs. He had 6 carries for 6 yards. So it wasn't the vintage Justin Fields taking off and running. He did it with his arms, only had 7 incompletions on the day. So they were getting it done. Defensively, they're tough. TJ Watt kind of welcomed Joe Alt to the league. Joe Alt had some issues. Joe Alt did well against Max Crosby in week 1, not so much against TJ Watt, who's looking at a defensive player of the year again early on, but he is just an absolute menace. And now the Chargers will take on the Chiefs next week. I would say maybe without Justin Herbert. Again, he was limping pretty well in the boot. Now, he's not a runner anyway, but still, I mean, you got to have some mobility, and they just may need to shut him down for a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to take probably a long-term view of that because we knew he had the designation coming in, and all it wasn't even like he planted wrong. He just got hit, and it once again re-aggravated an injury that most everyone will tell you, the high ankle, the most painful version of what you're going to deal with that ankle injury. So questions abound there for him. But for the AFC North right now, it's a definite reshuffling to start the season in the order we expected. We'll see if the Cincinnati Bengals can go and change that tune tonight. Coming up next, though, it's week 3 at GoJo Golic on Twitter. Who was the biggest surprise in the NFL weekend? Coming up next, we'll tell you why they both might have the same color hair here on GoJo Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., and Mike Golic Sr. And guys, we have to discuss some teams that have been quite surprising in this early stretch of the season here. Teams I frankly did not think would be undefeated after the first 3 weeks of the season. Let's start with the Vikings. This sounds fake, but noted not redhead Sam Darnold has thrown 4 touchdowns. The Vikings remain undefeated. Did either of you have Sam Darnold, noted not redhead, balling out on your bingo card? What do you think?
Oh, my God.
Boy,
you're just trying to hang on to
tear our
Jesse.
show apart this morning.
I will fight this. Okay. He's not
We're
a
going to
redhead.
continue to let the polls do their thing here, and we're going to get the information on Sam Darnold's hair front. But as far as Sam Darnold's play, Dad, you know what? I won't say that this is unexpected because we said going into this season, this was an if not now then when stop for Sam Darnold, who has always been talented or touted as immensely talented. There's a reason that Carolina took the swing at him. There's a reason that San Francisco brought him over. And now for the Vikings, while he was brought here to sort of be the guy that helped take J.J. McCarthy under his wing until he was ready to go out there on the field, he's still always been someone where we felt like there was that latent, untapped Gohan potential that now is being brought out by Kevin O'Connell, who's one of the best play callers in the league. And so I can't say I'm totally surprised, but this team being undefeated and him being a big part of that certainly is a bit stunning, knowing what we expected out of the NFC North.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what followed him from USC to the Jets, the turnovers, and you just can't afford to turn the ball over as much as he did, and he's not turning the ball over in Minnesota. That obviously helps when you have the best wide receiver in the game in Justin Jefferson, but he got another opportunity after being the.
Well, and I was going to say, and Aaron Jones, who had over 100 yards rushing in this game, like him switching sides in a rivalry here. They had a group around him, Dad, that you could trust. That was a big part of the sell here for sure.
Yeah, it when you're picked that high, and this will happen with Bryce Young if his time is over in Carolina, which they say it's not, that he'll be starting again. But when you're that high a pick, you always get a chance somewhere. And he had to sit for a bit and be the backup for Brock Purdy in San Francisco. But you knew he'd get a shot, maybe not handed a job, but given a competition in a camp, or to be a bridge guy. Like he was going to be a bridge guy and still going to be a bridge guy basically for J.J. McCarthy. That just got, elongated, the ramp and the runway for that with J.J. McCarthy's injury. So the bottom line for him is he's not turning the ball over. I agree. Kevin O'Connell has been a incredible find and help to Sam Darnold. The defense, Brian Flores in that defense is just so aggressive. And the last time C.J. Stroud had been blitzed that much, he actually handled it well. It was in the wild card game against the Browns. He actually threw the ball pretty well against the blitz, but in this one, just devastated.
Yeah, C.J. Stroud in that wild card game, it was the most he'd ever been blitzed in the game. He was blitzed 43% of his dropbacks in that game. In this game, it was just a little over 42%, but the result totally different, Dad. You saw a dejected C.J. Stroud, one of the most confident young men we've seen come into this league, who was the darling and the talk of the town in first year, on the sideline with his head in his hands. And this is back-to-back weeks now, Dad. We're obviously, listen, we can give you a bunch of statistical analysis of this season. The Vikings this season are top 10 in blitz rate and in pressure rate and have generated more than 5 sacks a game so far this season. They've been incredible at knocking people off their point and being effective in the run game as well. The Texans' ground game got contacted at or behind the line of scrimmage on 8 of their 11 design runs. And by the way, there were only 11 designed runs because you threw the game so out of whack, in no small part because of that defense. Dad, you just look, Brock Purdy in shambles after last week, coming off the field and saying to Brian Flores, that scheme is sick. C.J. Stroud dejected over on the sideline. This coach that came into the season making headlines for all the wrong reasons with his relationship with Tua Tagovailoa, his former quarterback in Miami, on Front Street, now, Dad, looks like the easy answer through the first 3 games of the season for the leader in the clubhouse for AP Assistant Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, just doing an incredible job. They always going to have that aggressive defense, and you know that when you go against them. And for the Texans, remember Joe Mixon had the big week 1 rushing, but he's out, so that certainly hurts their rushing attack, which they kind of lived off the pass last year. So they were definitely brought down to earth a little bit.
they're the total antithesis of this modern defensive movement that we've talked about with simulated pressures. Brian's like, no. We're going to give you the real thing, and it's going to hurt. And you've got a bunch of players that understand it, guys that have been around with him for a couple of years now. I mentioned the run stats before that. The Vikings have had contact in the run game at or behind the line of scrimmage this season on 50% of designed runs through 3 games. Think about that in a league where right now, especially we talk about in the NFC and in the NFC North, where the Lions get a big bounce back win against the Arizona Cardinals in no small part because they decided we're going to go out here and establish ourselves on the ground, reaffirm that identity. In this side of football in the NFC where that is most notably the case, this Vikings team is making contact with teams at or behind the line of scrimmage on half of designed runs. Like that as a pace. We're going to look right now and watch, the 49ers. Now, incomplete sample coming off this one since they drop a really bad game to a banged up Los Angeles Rams team after this, but keeping an eye on the Texans and where they go from here and how much is, hey, the Texans have real run game issues, or how much is, hey, going against Brian Flores defense is a little bit of an outlier in terms of production.
And, we just talked about the AFC North, maybe, not being the best division in football. Maybe look at the NFC North, sans Chicago, with Minnesota, with Detroit, and with Green Bay. And Malik Willis leading that team without Jordan Love. I mean, that is a powerful, Minnesota still being undefeated. Detroit and Green Bay with just 1 loss. That's turning into a pretty damn good division.
It is. That's one of those where, it was the same headline coming off last week, and it was reaffirmed this weekend. You could argue the 2 best coaching jobs in the NFL right now are going on inside the same division, as Kevin O'Connell makes this happen with Sam Darnold on one side, and Matt LaFleur goes and gets Malik Willis the revenge game win against the Titans on the other side, 2 in a row now with the backup quarterback in for Jordan Love. But Jesse, we hinted at the surprise, so why don't we go ahead and dive right in? I looked up yesterday. I had to go back and watch this after because I just assumed after the 49ers got out to an early lead against this beat up Rams team that everything was going to be fine and good for them, and it's gone.
Yeah, so we got to talk about the 49ers suffering that surprising loss to the Rams. So let's play a little something we're going to call Fact or Facade, fellas. So we're going to give you some information based on the games that went down yesterday. You're going to tell me if it's fact or facade, okay? So 49ers injuries are catching up to them, fact or facade, because it seems like you can't really argue against it at this point.
Honestly, especially looking at the game last night, Dad, I guess you can say fact just because some of the stuff we saw, like the Ronnie Bell drops and some of the miscues in the passing game, could be the result of being down Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, all going into this game. Now, Juwan Jennings has a career night. That deal bringing him back looks pretty great as he goes for 175 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. Brock Purdy looked sensational. No turnovers or blemishes without all those guys, so you couldn't blame him. Dad, this seemed to be special teams miscues left and right for this 49ers team that's made a bad habit of that for the last couple of weeks now. And then the other side, the Rams just finding a way to make plays. And Kyle Shanahan said it before the game, if you give Matthew Stafford enough cracks at it, he will make you pay at the end. And that seemed to be the case here for the 49ers. So I'll say fact just because, again, some of the critical drops are areas that wouldn't be happening if you had your normal weapons out there.
I almost say facade. I mean, they had 425 yards, had the ball for 7 more minutes than the Rams. As you mentioned, Purdy didn't turn the ball over, and that's without Kittle and Deebo and CMC. But that offense was still moving the ball. The defense, I mean, you look at the defensive side of the ball and special teams, that game was going to go to overtime. They were going to go to overtime until that punt return takes it to midfield with under a minute to go. And that ends up being ball game. So I would have guessed just saying, I mean, the 49ers are going to be hurt with injuries, but offensively, now 24, maybe you can put up a little more than that. But I'll lay this one on the defense. They have a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter.
Yep. Nope. Got to find a way to make that happen. Jesse, what do we got coming up next?
The Rams can win the division, fact or facade?
That probably Facade to me. This is going to be really about who gets healthy, and I think the 49ers have a better chance of doing that sooner than the Rams. Now, the Rams got their starting left tackle back, which was huge in that game and went a long way. Kyron Williams had some big plays in this one. Their receiver room, we know, still banged up and compromised. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp both missing significant time due to injury. And, Dad, it's like last year. If they can get back on the field consistently at some point, then, yes, this offense still has a chance to go out there and play really well. But I just think with how much injury's been the story already for them, it's hard to predict anything else in their future.
Yeah, I'd say it's a Facade outside of Kyron Williams' fantasy teams. I mean, the guys that have him on their team, had three more touchdowns. But Seattle, undefeated and looking good. Arizona, while they're 1-2, they show signs of life, and certainly you're not going to count out San Francisco. So, I think that's a Facade, Jesse.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to this next one here. Ugly wins or good wins, fact or Facade, after we saw Eagles and Saints, a 15-12 game, some interesting quarterback play with the Eagles, got some concerns there, fact or Facade?
That's fact.
Okay.
Listen,
go ahead.
That's fact. That's fact. You get the W, and it's a lot easier to work on mistakes after you get the W than the L. So you find a way. It's kind of like what we talked about in college, survive and advance. Even when you're playing a lesser team, just if you eke out a small win, you take it. You just take the L and you move on. So ugly wins are absolutely good wins.
Ugly wins are good wins, but the turnover issues for Jalen Hurts are starting to become just that, consistent issues for this Eagles offense that managed to absorb losing the whole right side of their offensive line during this game. Lane Johnson, I think, left early in the game with a concussion. Yep. And so you had backups along that right side that struggled early on. But at the end of the day, Saquon Barkley did exactly what you brought him over here to do on offense, reset that foundation and make the one big play that completely changed the outcome of this game. And then defensively, Dad, I will say now, again, incomplete sample size because we know the Saints offensive line on the interior got reshuffled and beat up during this game, but Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter especially, monster games on the interior by this Philadelphia defensive line that had been in hell through the first couple of weeks of the season and been a real question mark for a lot of people. That one emphatically fact for me, the defensive side of the ball, that talent starting to marry back up and actually produce results.
Jalen Carter was an absolute monster playing in New Orleans backfield. I mean, they were incredible. And I've never seen three defenders run into one another on Dallas Goedert's crossing route. They ran a crossing route. They were playing man, not one, not two, three defenders all ran into each other and left Dallas Goedert open on the crossing route for a 61-yard gain. That turned out to be one of the biggest plays of the game. That was absolutely amazing.
All right, Jesse, let's get to one more from this game. What do we got?
All right, those are the real Saints, fact or Facade, because they went into that game against Eagles looking like that number one scoring offense was unstoppable, then got a little bit of a reality check.
I'm going to say Facade, Dad. I still think the real Saints team are a bit better than this one. I do think, now this is a reminder, and I think a lot of their success, people are going to talk about Derek Carr and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, by the way, after that game. I think there was that audio that people heard of them saying they're pretenders, they got Derek Carr over there, or whatever was attributed to him. A lot of their success was built off the fact that they were able to run the ball at a rate that this game was not sustainable because of the injury. I still think that offensive line, when healthy, and Alvin Kamara are the strength of that team. And Derek Carr is a good enough quarterback with some of the weapons that they've got there. We saw Chris Olave with some big plays in this game to still be a team that challenges to win this division. I think that's real.
Yeah, I think that's a Facade too. I think it's real, the chance to win the division because of the division. The division had Atlanta lose, the Saints lose, the Bucks lose, and Carolina win. Carolina with a monster frigging win led by the Ginger, Andy Dalton.
You got to admit, he's actually a redhead, right, Jesse? I mean, for God's sake, we stand for something here.
Oh, my God. Obviously. What is Ron Weasley MFer out here?
Anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't even know what we stand for anymore. Coming up next,
No.
we'll give you a quick look ahead at a Monday Night Football doubleheader and what another team from the AFC North has to say about their place in the hierarchy. Welcome back to GoJo Golic. We're going to have Marshall Newhouse coming up from the pregame power up here on the DraftKings network to get you guys set at the start of the next hour for Monday Night Football doubleheader. But let's talk about it right now and cash it or trash it, presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. The Bengals, 7.5-point favorites against the Commanders in a must-win game. I think they get it done, but the Commanders have covered the spread in their last 6 AFC road games. I think the Commanders in that ground game against a suspect Cincinnati Bengals rush defense can manage to cover the spread in this one heading into Monday night. We'll talk to Marshall Newhouse more about it coming up here in a couple minutes. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Hour number 2 here. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. Coming up in about 20 minutes, Marty Smith from ESPN going to stop by and talk about a little college ball from over the weekend. We may have to start having serious conversations about these Tennessee Vols after the win that they got in what still feels weird to me to say, Dad, SEC play against Oklahoma. Like, I understand we've made the move. I understand it's all happening now. But to actually see one of the big high-profile matchups of that and then SC and Michigan as a Big Ten regular season game is still going to take some getting used to for me.
Yeah, it'll take about a year, and then we'll be used to it. But it is odd that was an SEC matchup, and like you said, USC Michigan was a Big Ten matchup, which was a hell of a good game, by the way. That we'll get into, but it is odd. But boy, Tennessee is for real. They are for real.
Yeah, no. So we'll talk plenty about that coming up, because that is a team now that, as the SEC firmly plants its flag with the most college football playoff contenders we've got right now, Tennessee firmly in the mix on that. But in the mix with us here right now, Marshall Newhouse, kind enough to hop in with us here. You guys can catch him as a part of the pregame power up on DraftKings Mondays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, getting ready. And this week, Marshall, you guys got double the fun, man. We're in Monday night doubleheader season, which has to be very exciting. So how you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing great. And yeah, we get to double dip tonight a little bit, so you can get your flicker finger going on the remote, or you get the double screen going with Jacksonville, Buffalo, or Washington, Cincinnati. But a lot of fun. Some teams that really got to show us something, or you risk these seasons starting to fade away a little bit.
You know, you talk about teams showing something, but how about player? How about Trevor Lawrence? I mean, is it step up time for Trevor, or has it been step up time for Trevor?
It's long been step up time for Trevor. I mean, he got paid as a quarterback who they expect to be able to lead them and be the reason why they're winning these games. And he's doing the opposite. He's kind of just being a guy, and at times being a liability. And with those flowing locks of hair, and he's got a lot of talent. He's a guy that they paid and expect to be a game changer, and he's just not doing that. I'm not exactly sure. We'll have to talk to some QB experts, but from my watching of the tape, he just looks unsure of himself. There's the second and third read thing that we talk about with quarterbacks. When the defense, which they always do, they take the easy throw away. What do you do in your second, third read? Not only is he not getting to the second and third read consistently enough, he's making bad decisions on top of that, and he's putting his team behind the 8 ball. And so being a guy who's making the money he's making, that's just unacceptable.
And I feel like, being a guy who is lauded as talent and all these great things, the worst guy you could see across from you as the foil for that is Josh Allen, who seems to right now, Marshall, be maximizing all the talent that we saw for him coming out of Wyoming to the tune of what looks like in the early going a real MVP caliber season from him. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think he's just slowly setting the Thanos stones in the gauntlet week by week, reminding himself that, hey, I'm Josh Allen. I'm one of one in this league. I can make all the throws that Joe Brady needs me to make, but now Joe Brady's getting me a running game that's consistent and varied. And then when it's go time, I'm also 245, 250 pounds. I like to hurdle guys. I like to run people over. I'm going to go be myself. Rain, sleet, or snow, they drafted me to make plays in inclement weather. They drafted me to close games, and that's what he's coming into his own doing.
You know, they always talk about with Josh Allen, boy, you should be careful how much he runs. He can't run that much. I say that's ridiculous. I say he has to run as much as he can for this team to win.
Yeah, there's a difference between just running because you're panicked or you're really not doing the things you need to do on the actual play, how the plays are structured. But he's playing within the system and then taking these moments to just scramble, pick up first downs, get themselves in second and manageable, third and manageable, or in the goal line of short yardage, being like, I'm just going to pick this up because it's easier and because I'm one of the best weapons in short yardage, a la Cam Newton, where my body's just too big. If I decide to lean forward and go get this, I can. And that's just an ultimate plus for their team when he uses it in the right intentional way.
So Josh Allen finding ways to be intentional with his legs. Marshall, overall big picture for this game, what's going to be the key, especially for Trevor Lawrence, who we mentioned needs to start producing in a level requisite to his skills against the Bills defense that last time we saw him. The front four did a lot of damage against a Miami team that lost their quarterback. The linebacker level continues to get beat up here. What do you expect from this outfit going up against Trevor Lawrence?
Well, I think he and Doug Peterson have to come up with a game plan that just maximizes their weapons that they have. They're guys that are kind of going unused. They've got new receivers, an old receiver in Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. They've got to get these guys in space. This Buffalo Bills defense can be had, but the last thing you want to do is getting these obvious passing downs where your guys are running right into coverage. There's been a ton of talk around the league around too high safeties, umbrella coverage, but there are openings for QBs who know how to take advantage of those openings. And so you hope that they can build off their running game and use ETN a little more. You hope this offensive line shows up because, yeah, Travis, he's not played well. Trevor has not played well, but he has not had the best protection. And so on multiple fronts, this Jacksonville Jaguars offense really has to step up. And this is, these are the moments early in the season that don't make or break your season, but they really define how the rest of this thing is going to go. And they're just a team that's underachieving all across the board.
So looking at Cincinnati and Washington, this has to be you guys as former old lineman's dream. Now, the old line's been iffy in Washington, but Cincinnati's given up the third most yards between tackles. So this is one where it seems the old line could put their hand in the dirt and move straight ahead.
In a traditional sense, yeah, you'd say so. But this Washington offense is very parsed down for Jaden Daniels. But you hope that they just kind of hopefully simplify things a little bit, allow that running game to take hold because of the stat like that, because there's going to be lanes like that. And then on top of that, when Jaden Daniels gets opportunities to run himself, you hope that he protects himself. I'm seeing a very troubling trend of him. Well, is it a trend because he did it at LSU, but he is not protecting his body. And for a guy that doesn't look like he's built like the Josh Allen, as we discussed, or the Cam Newton, he's not going to last. And so I hope that someone's in his ear, getting him to a place where it's like, hey, buddy, we need you for the long haul. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Yes, there will be running lanes. Yes, there will be opportunities for you to make plays. But there's, again, the discernment for when that's appropriate, when you put your body on the line. We're all tough here, but we need you tough for 17 plus games for multiple seasons. We don't just need you tough at week 4 right now.
And part of that would be, hey, maybe take the ball out of his hands a little bit. Brian Robinson been good in the backfield for them. Give him a chance against that Cincinnati defense on the inside, because on the outside, they are led by the ever-confident Cam Taylor-Britt, who, again, just continues to give us gold in the quote department here. And when asked by ESPN's Ben Baby about what he's seen from Jaden Daniels so far, he said, quote, composed. They don't make him do a lot. They keep it really simple for him. Nice college offense. Cliff Kingsbury, the OC, so they love to move guys around there, but just keep it real simple for him. And Marshall, if there's anything we learned about Cam Taylor-Britt last week after their matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs, this guy has no problem talking because he's also capable of going out there and backing it up.
Yeah, he's absolutely backing it up on the field, and he's graduated from the slightly passive-aggressive backhanded compliment university. So he's got a PhD in that, and I love it because he is backing it up. But he's not wrong. But I also think that they're just easing Jaden Daniels and his offense into things. He's got Cliff Kingsbury there, who we know can be creative, but it is more of a college spread type of attack. And so they're tailoring that type of attack with what the NFL offers. Yeah, there will be opportunities for, bubble screens and RPOs and gun runs, but also, can we get under center? Can we run lead? Can we run power? Can we run these things to take advantage of, as you said, Senior, a light unit inside a defense that's not been great against the run? So Cam Taylor-Britt, a quote machine. We'll see if it sticks up for it again.
Well, like what I've always said, the further away from the ball, the more talk. DBs and wide receivers are the biggest talkers out there. Linemen, we're just too busy trying to get air in our lungs for the next play. As far as the games that went on yesterday, I think the most eye-popping thing was the fact that the Cowboys gave up 274 yards on the ground. Actually, 464 yards in the last 2 games, by far the most in the NFL. And I'll say again, an old lineman's dream to run straight downhill, but as a former D lineman, a D lineman and a defense's nightmare to get run on that much. Jerry Jones said he couldn't afford Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry was the thorn in their side. What's your take on this Dallas defense?
Well, Jerry Jones said he not only could he not afford Derrick Henry, he said that they were good to go from a free agency standpoint. So on multiple fronts on this team, they could have upgraded or at least attempted to really upgrade it, and they didn't. And now you get what this defense under Mike Zimmer, which I had high hopes for, looks like a sieve. It just looks like a dam that's broken. And again, I'm twofold. I'm excited because Derrick Henry was always a guy. I played with him in Tennessee in 2020. He's a guy that takes time to get going, not only in a game, but as the season goes on. He's a bigger body, but people don't think that he's as fast as he is. The next thing you know, that's 250 pounds freight train coming at you. And our guy in the backfield learned that lesson the hard way. And so I'm excited for Baltimore, who said, hey, out of 60 plays, we're going to run it 45 times, stop us. And in Dallas, they could not stop them. And so Baltimore, I think, is exciting because I think they're going to really understand Derrick Henry is a weapon, and we got to use him a certain kind of way. I think Coach Harbaugh understands that more than anyone else, using their guys to their best ability. And then if you're Dallas, can't stop a nosebleed right now, what do you do? Who do you turn to right now? I'm not sure there is anyone on the roster right now. And so you got to just batten down the hatches. And Micah Parsons can only do so much on defense for you. He's a pass rusher mostly. He's a dynamic athlete. Yes, he can be great in the run, but he is just one guy. They need some help, and they need it now because this team ain't going to win that many games. They can't stop the run. They can't stop people from putting up points on them.
Yeah, it's been all bad. You saw him and DeMarcus Lawrence having it out on the sideline a little bit at the end of that game. Frustration boiling over there. Marshall, I want to finish up. I believe I went back and looked. You guys would have overlapped for a season. How about your former teammate, the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, coming off the shelf this weekend and getting it done? Did you see that coming?
No, not only did we overlap for a season, we came in as fresh babies in college.
That's right. Of course. What am I talking about?
And played together. And so it was just incredible to see, he deserved that opportunity. I give props to Dave Canales for making that change. That's a hard decision to make. He got criticism for it. Again, this is one game, but Andy's been doing a lot of prep. He's a consummate pro. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler. I don't know, people thought that this was just going to go a different way. And then, you hope that this is a catalyst for the team to understand that, yes, Bryce Young can still play. We don't know if they've kind of said that they're done with him or not. Give him a chance just to learn and see what it looks like to approach a game plan and just execute it. Andy made a couple throws yesterday that were incredible throws, but also what he did was he made timely checkdowns. He put the ball in guys' hands. When they are up, they just really did an efficient kind of grind the game away game plan. There was nothing super special after a certain point that he did. He was just being a pro. He was being what teams expect you to be, which is make the plays that are there and get us to the next down unscathed. And he's been great at that. But then you saw the throw, the seam, the dot to Thielen down the middle of the field. He can do things like that all day. And so it's just really exciting to see for a guy who's just been patient, has been bounced around the league a little bit, but he got his opportunity, he's seizing it.
It really is. It's the ultimate example of a guy, you get out of a toxic relationship, and then the minute someone holds the door open for you, you're looking around going, oh, wow, this is amazing. I can't believe someone treats me like this, as Andy Dalton comes in for the Carolina Panthers. And, it's good, Marshall, we've talked about this a lot, the rest of that roster to get to go out and experience this. Andy talked about that after the game. The rest of that team has been looking, it's doom and gloom through the first couple of weeks. You've been the laughingstock of the NFL. And so now to see the ball go through the basket that many times and empower the rest of that group, no doubt going to be big for them going towards the rest of the season. Big for everybody else going and checking out the pregame power up coming up later tonight. Marshall Newhouse, Trey Wingo, Claudia Bellafato. Emerson, I saw, has got some interesting stuff coming up as always, so we'll keep an eye on him. But Marshall, we appreciate the time as always, man. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Thank you, fellas. Have a good one.
Thanks, Marshall. Yeah, Mike, it was twofold in Carolina. It was have Bryce Young sit and kind of collect himself. And as I said, Dave Canales owed it to the other 52 guys in that locker room to give them the best chance to win. So it was great to see two redheads, Andy Dalton and Sam Darnold, go ahead and do their thing on Sunday. Right, Jesse? Yeah.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. Our thanks to Marshall Newhouse, 11-year NFL veteran offensive tackle, for stopping by with us. Again, you can check him out. Pregame Power Up coming up tonight on the DraftKings Network, getting you ready for the doubleheader that we've got coming up there. But to help us look back at a little college football from this last weekend, pumped here to bring in one of our favorite former teammates, Marty Smith. You guys know him as the co-host of Marty and McGee on the SEC Network. You see him doing great reporting and features all over ESPN. He is here with us on behalf of Game Change, which I know we're excited to hear a lot about here. But Marty, how you doing, man? You're one of the busiest guys in this business.
I'm fantastic, gentlemen. Grateful to get to spend this time with you guys. I love you both, and I love your spirit. And I'm a little jealous, man. Y'all are taking over the sports media world. I need to go to like the Golic 101 to learn how to build my own media empire.
I don't know about that. I think we're trying to get like you right now, man, and we'll keep plugging away at that to make it happen. We know it only comes with the hard work, and you've been putting that in, man, humping it over the last couple of weeks, all the different spots that we've seen you. But I want to talk about one of the spots right now with you that's going to be, I think, one of the centers of the college football world here after the result this weekend, Marty. How impressed were you by the job the Tennessee Vols did on the road in Norman against those Sooners?
I think through the first month of the season, they're the best team in the country. And I know that's quite a statement, but with Quinn Ewers on the show, you know, Texas is fantastic. And Ewers might be the best player in the country. But when you look at the totality of what Tennessee has, they have elite quarterback play, an elite offensive system, tremendous weapons on the perimeter offensively and in the backfield. They have a great offensive line. So that side of the football is just a juggernaut. But it's the defensive side of the football, to me, that separates this Tennessee team from some we've seen in the past. They are absolutely nasty defensively, and they made Oklahoma look really bad at home in the SEC opener for the Oklahoma Sooners. And Brent Venables is one of the smartest defensive minds that there is, Oklahoma's head coach. And Josh Heupel and his staff put together a game plan that was just fantastic. They were explosive, but they ran the football right down Oklahoma's throat. And so it was that meld of new school and old school that really seems to calibrate into national championship potential. So I just don't know how many superlatives I could come up with, but they're damn good.
Yeah, I agree with you on both sides of the ball. We keep talking about Heupel and the offense, but that defense, they finally actually gave up a touchdown. Now, their first three opponents weren't very damning opponents, so they're giving up no touchdowns there, but finally gave up touchdown against Oklahoma. They'll be tested. They have a bye this week, then play Arkansas, but they have both Alabama and Georgia on the schedule after that big SEC matchup of Tennessee and Oklahoma to go along with the Big Ten, the big Big Ten matchup of USC and Michigan. Were we kind of burying Michigan a little early after their 290-yard rushing performance against USC?
It was fantastic and a signature win for Coach Moore and his group, a necessary win. Look, Texas undressed them, and Texas was they didn't fight a lot of resistance when they were in Ann Arbor. And going back to Ewers just a second, I feel like that was his best performance as a Texas quarterback, even though he beat Alabama last season in Tuscaloosa. If you look at his command of the offense that Steve Sarkisian wants him to run, he never took his eyes off the field. He's able to field pressure, step up in the pocket, move around in the pocket, and deliver just strikes to his weapons. And so that was a dismantling. So, yes, I think a lot of us went, okay, Michigan sent all that talent to the NFL. Harbaugh went to the NFL. Now they're in a rebuilding phase. Wrong. Because Lincoln has a good football team. You know, Lincoln's football team looked good against LSU, beat LSU. And so I feel like that was a very important win for Sherrone Moore and that group in Ann Arbor. And it was physical. That's the kind of football they want to play and the kind of football they have to play. I still think, though, Ohio State is far and away the best team in that conference. And so we'll see what happens on November 30th. It all comes down to that. It's really what matters.
And certainly the folks in Columbus believe that as well. That whole offseason, yeah, you could say it's national championship or bust, but you hear them talk, it's Michigan or bust to start things off before they ever get to that point. Marty, we've talked a couple of times now about Texas and the Longhorns. We know Quinn Ewers on the shelf, as you mentioned. How impressed have you been by Arch Manning and what he's done now through a game and a half sample size of being out there as the starter for them?
I mean, he had a couple picks last weekend against Louisiana Monroe. Outside of that, I don't know that there's a whole lot of nitpicking that can be done. What impresses me the most is his patience in this era of transactional collegiate athletics where folks want to go play right now, especially someone like him who has obvious talent, who has that pedigree, could go to myriad Power 4 universities and start right now. He has that patience, and granted, he's afforded that. But nonetheless, that it is impressive. And when you have the lineage that he has and all of that wisdom that comes from his grandfather, his uncles, certainly his dad, and all of that, it impresses me when guys wait. I went down before the season started, before Georgia beat the brakes off of Clemson in Atlanta in week 1 and had a long sit-down conversation with Carson Beck. And it's kind of that same thing. Carson waited. He got his job taken from him by Stetson Bennett and then sat and watched Stetson write a movie and win 2 national titles in Athens. But he waited, and he got better, and he was patient. And now he's going to be one of the top picks in the NFL draft coming up. And so I just admire that in this iteration of college football where so much of it is, coach, it is not, coach, what can I do this offseason to develop and end up on the playing surface? It's, coach, how much are you going to pay me? In so many instances, not everybody. That's a generalization, but that's also a fact.
As far as, looking at Colorado, and I want to talk about Colorado had a crazy win over Baylor, but
they did.
Not really talking about Colorado, but a player on Colorado. I'm kind of down on the Heisman. It's kind of a quarterback award, but Travis Hunter is establishing himself as the best player in the country. Where do you think his chances are? And speaking of high draft pick, but also of the potential of the Heisman.
I think they're very high. I am a voter. I will just say I'm looking at him very closely, Mike. But I marvel at his gifts. And not just his gifts, but the manner with which he honors those gifts. He's a young man that is so focused on finding the best version of himself every day. And he also has a hype machine behind him, which, let's be honest, that's important in the Heisman race. And Coach Prime is going to do everything that he can to not only accentuate what Travis is doing, but what Shedeur is doing, and make sure that one or both of those young men has an opportunity in New York when we get there in December. I just appreciate the spirit that Travis has, because he's one of those guys that he ain't really interested in all the stuff outside of the game. He's interested in being the best version of Travis Hunter. And those are the ones that find the best self and become great. Look, the versatility is historic, guys. I don't want to turn into, captain prisoner of the moment hyperbole here. But his athletic gifts and ability to utilize them are just remarkable.
It's been amazing to see him continue to do that. We know last year, the Colorado State game, so physical that we ultimately got him off the field for a time where we felt like we were building that momentum. I mean, in a day and age, Marty, where we're watching Shohei Ohtani do what he's done in the Major League Baseball level, cow. I think we've got a heightened awareness of freak athlete with the ability to do more than most of us can do. And that. So I'm with you. I think Travis Hunter as a legitimate Heisman contender is something we're going to be talking about for a long time this season on an improved Colorado roster. I want to circle all the way back, though, to the top of the sport here. As we sit here now with the AP coaches poll, I'm seeing 5 of the top 6 teams in the sport right now, all from the Southeastern Conference. And I think we all know about Georgia. We've heard and talked about Kalen DeBoer in Alabama. Tennessee and Josh Heupel are now going to be the story. Marty, from someone that's around this conference a lot, should we be buying into Ole Miss right now? They're sitting here at number 6 in the country. They're undefeated. I think we're still waiting maybe for that marquee win to start the season so far. They got Kentucky coming up this weekend. Is this a team that you believe belongs alongside the rest of the groups we just mentioned?
Absolutely. But with the caveat you just stated, Junior, I was waiting the last couple years, because Lane Kiffin is creating the greatest era in Ole Miss football history right now. And he has a great quarterback in Jackson Dart who has a lot of weapons. They're also very good on the other side of the football. But we're all waiting. Is he going to be able to close those signature victories? I was waiting on him to beat Saban. We thought it might happen 1 year ago, ultimately did not. But yes, I think they're formidable. I think that they are not just talented, but schematically they're very sound. Lane is such a great offensive mind, and his evolution as a person too, guys. I know that you are two gentlemen who really appreciate leadership and the way that men and women lead in collegiate athletics. And Lane's evolution as a person, with learning so much about himself, working very hard to become the best version of Lane Kiffin and working through how to relate better to his players. I go back a couple years about why Jackson Dart even came to Ole Miss. He told me himself he came to Ole Miss because he saw the relationship that Lane Kiffin built with Matt Corral. And part of that relationship with Matt Corral was built on, let's both have the self-conviction to have season-long sobriety. And with that came extreme mental clarity and extreme emotional clarity. And you think about that evolution of maturity that Lane has shown. I think that's part of this too. I don't think that can be overstated how important that is in this era of Ole Miss football.
Just a couple of minutes left. Another team I wonder what you think if they're in it, is the team that had the best, at least individual person in the portal, and that's Miami with Cam Ward, second in the country in passing yards, first in touchdowns. Their schedule is unbelievably favorable. They only have one more ranked team, that's Louisville. The rest are unranked. So do you think they're legit top 5?
I think they're very good, yes. And Ward is very impressive. They play my Virginia Tech Hokies this weekend, and holy smokes, let's send a few up. But if they're not overwhelmingly favored in every single game moving forward, something's off, because they're a very good team. And to your point, I mean, I think Louisville's ranked 15th right now, and that's all that they have left on the schedule in terms of ranked opponents. Now, I did preseason pick Clemson to win the ACC. Who knows? We'll see when we get there. If Miami faces Clemson in the ACC championship, that'd be a hell of a football game, because I think Clemson's really finding their identity. They look really good recently. Defensively, they're elite nationally, and Cade Klubnik seems to finally be settling down a little bit. So, yeah, Miami's really good, Mike, but I think Clemson is as well.
All right, we've talked about a lot of game changers today with you, Marty. We know you're here on behalf of Game Change. We got about a minute left here. What can you tell us about what you guys got going on?
So grateful for the platform, guys. Quickly, in this era where every university, I mean, you guys are Notre Dame guys, even Notre Dame that has a wealth of resources, Texas A&M, Ohio State, Michigan, universities that have that pedigree and those resources are still trying to figure out how to raise money for their athletic departments now. Much less where I went, Radford University, where it's about survival. Game Change comes in right there. All right. All you do is go to gogamechange.com, input the credit or debit card of your choice, choose the university you love, and every purchase you make with that credit card automatically rounds up to the next dollar. The difference goes directly to the athletic department you chose, and they disperse it how they so choose. It's considered a charitable gift, so it's a write-off, and you're entering yourself for massive cash prizes. It's a really cool way for all of us to contribute to the teams we love. And again, gogamechange.com, credit or debit card, choose your school, boom, you're off and running. It's an awesome initiative in this NIL era.
I'm going to say an incredibly creative solution here. Marty, you're the best. We appreciate your time and insight on this, brother. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon, all right?
Love you both. Appreciate you guys.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr., and Mike Golic Sr. Guys, the Raiders fell to the New Look Panthers, who have redhead Andy Dalton under center. And the surprising loss has led to some surprising sound coming out of Vegas.
Just didn't seem to show up tonight.
No, they didn't. I think as the game went on, I don't think it was a team. I think there was definitely some individuals that made business decisions, and will make business decisions going forward as well.
What do you make of that, you guys? Because it's a little like, okay, we saw some business decisions. Now we're going to make business decisions. A little bit ominous there.
So that makes for a very interesting film session is what that makes for. You know, as players, when the game's going on, you actually go through plays during a game, and if something bad happens on that play, you literally think about the next day and you're going to have to watch film of that play over again. Or at least I did. I would literally think about it on the field. I'd be, oh man, damn, that's going to look horrible on film tomorrow. And if you got guys out there making business decisions, that's a coach that, you know, they can talk one-on-one to you, or the realness of a film session. They say the eye in the sky don't lie. And that means for technical X's and O's, and that means for effort and hustle as well. And coaches have zero problem showing a lack of effort or a lack of want to everybody in a film room.
Yeah, I guess, Dad, it's always interesting to see whom, because we've seen for so many years a team like the Patriots, the example is, hey, you're going to hold the player accountable at the top of this and Tom Brady as much as anybody else to set that tone. You're willing to do it for a guy like Davante Adams, because I saw there were some people wondering, hey, Davante Adams really didn't go after a tackle on an interceptions late. Maybe he's a guy being referenced there. I know Davante, when he got asked about it after the game, said he's not sure how you'd be able to even tell that without going back and watching the film already. So this is a team that got blindsided by a situation that seemed a bit abnormal, right? You're going from facing a Panthers team that had been a laughingstock to now all of a sudden Andy Dalton, a capable veteran quarterback who, listen, you've got film on, comes out there, and you ride the roller coaster offensively that I believe this Raiders team is going to ride all year long. And so, Dad, it will be interesting how Antonio Pierce handled this, because he's an old school player that certainly brings that linebackers mentality to this role, but he's also on a team with a very clear pecking order.
Yeah, there is no doubt he's gonna lay down the law. But you're right, there is a pecking order, and players know the pecking order. But this was an abysmal performance. They had touchdowns late because it was 33-7 in the fourth quarter. This game was over, and Andy Dalton, the 36-year-old, did it to you, throwing for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 123 rating. So that was a bit of a head scratcher for a Raiders team where we didn't think a lot of anyway. They're quarterback deficient. They're running back efficient. Not efficient at the running back position. They have Davante Adams and Brock Bowers as receivers, and that's what they need to build upon on offense.
Yeah, I think as much as it's going to be the soundbite here coming off guys making business decisions, it's all right. Well, listen, if it was a business decision, I don't know if it involves Davante Adams or not, but he's not going anywhere. You're not going to do anything with him at this point in the season, and with what he means and the value to that team under Mark Davis. And so if there are players to add further down the roster, guys that are special teams guys or back end guys on the other end, I'm sure then they could be talking about, hey, we'll bring in a replacement, we'll do something there. But in general, what it means tangibly for this Raiders team, not much. Like, they're in a mode this season where we figured, hey, they're probably not going to be a great team, especially accounting for the division they play in. And that's probably for the best, because we know the quarterback of their future is not on their roster. Doesn't make it any better in the meantime for Antonio Pierce, who's taking this over as a first-time head coach. But Dad, to me, the story of this game was so much on the other side of the field. Unfortunately, in my mind, the Raiders are a team where this is going to be their season. It's going to be the ups and downs that come with a guy like Gardner Minshew being your quarterback. On the other side, Where are you at on the notion of the Panthers trading Bryce Young after what we saw this weekend? Because I don't know how much going back there is at this point to Bryce Young after you've taken him off the field. We talk about this all the time in how you get your rookie quarterbacks on and the way it matters. There are people that believe you should get them out there right away and take their lumps. There are people that believe that you should go and let them sit for multiple years like Jordan Love, if you're lucky, at least a year like Patrick Mahomes, to try and get some seasoning on them. But Dad, can you recover what he's lost through the first year and couple games of his career with this franchise, knowing that everyone in the locker room has seen the struggles there already and has seen how deflating it can be for that entire team when he's on the field?
Yeah, a breath or taking a little break may not be enough. He may need a different, where the grass hopefully greener somewhere else. The issue is, where do you go to? Because Andy Dalton is a short-term answer. All right, he's 36 years old. He's not the quarterback of the future for the Carolina Panthers. So you're going to be bad this year again? Do you dig deep into the draft again, which I would imagine they probably would? That would obviously answer the questions, but it's you're in a position to, and I don't expect Andy Dalton to have this performance every week. I think it'll find its level, and there'll be some good and some bad, and there'll be a time for, should Bryce Young come back on the field? And when that time comes, I think he should go back on the field. The season is still long enough to give him more of a chance. Again, he's in a new system and it's just his second year. So and he didn't play any preseason. So let's let him take a breath, and then let's give him a chance again just to see if there's something there. You have time before you make that decision. So use that time wisely. And we don't see what's going on in practice. We don't see what's going on in the fill room. We don't see what's going on with him at the chalkboard. We don't see any of that if there is truly development. We just see Sundays where we see the struggles.
Yeah, but I think that's still enough. I think you broke Bryce Young if you're that organization, and I don't think there's a long storied track record of players like that getting fixed with that current team and organization. So while, Dad, I don't think there necessarily needs to be urgency, I think if you can find someone that's a buyer, especially as this year goes along. Now, I know people mentioned the Miami Dolphins potentially. I can't think of a worse place for him to go considering the volatility of the offensive line in front of him and the things that have been issues for Bryce early in his career. But as the season goes along, if there's a compelling offer, I think if you're Carolina, you take it. Because like you said, Andy Dalton's not your quarterback of the future. And for a lot of these guys that are backup level quarterbacks, even Sam Darnold in Minnesota, I was talking about this with somebody the other day. We're going to get a blow-up game at some point, and how he responds to that and absorbs that is going to determine a lot about the Vikings' ceiling for this season. But for Carolina, it's not always going to be this version of Andy Dalton coming out here and dealing. You're going to have to make future plans at quarterback, and I just think at this point, given what you've already seen so much on the field, it's going to be hard for anyone as a part of this current administration to let go of that in the future for Bryce Young, or I think to make the strides he needs to with that pressure of being this franchise's number one overall pick still hanging over his head anytime he flirts with coming back on the field. There's just a difference between being this franchise's pick at number one and being a reclamation project for somebody else that I think makes trading him the operative move.
Yeah. I actually think you're right, because there's going to be some good quarterbacks coming out of the college, out of the draft. And I can't see Carolina, who is going to be one of the worst teams in the league. So they're going to have a high pick. So you got to believe they're gonna start new with a quarterback. So I guess I would agree with you and say it would be time if you get a compelling deal to take it.
Well, and I saw Dan Orlovsky talking about this, like, do what's best for the player here also, which they're not inclined to do, and that's unfortunately not going to be part of their decision-making. But I hope for it for Bryce Young, because getting away from that organization seems to be in anyone's best interest, given who they've got running the place right now. So they'll eventually bring some other quarterback in, Dad, and then we'll worry about them too, because unfortunately the guy writing the checks isn't changing.
Yeah, the line "do what's best for the player" isn't applicable. That's not happening. The team's going to do what's best for the team, and that's their number one reason.
And hopefully that just turns out to get Bryce Young away from what's gone on in there and give him a chance at reviving what could still be a solid career for a guy that a lot of people, myself included, liked coming out of Alabama. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Time to finish up the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings network. And if you're new here, stopping by maybe after you saw LeBron James at the end of last week, you can catch us on Samsung TV Plus, the Roku channel, Xumo Play, Vizio Watch Free Plus, Google TV, Sling Free Stream, and DraftKingsNetwork.com as well. It's a lot of places, I know. And if you miss us live in any of those places or our great guests, thank you to Marshall Newhouse, former 11-year NFL veteran offensive lineman, and Marty Smith, host of Marty and McGee on ESPN, for helping us talk about the NFL's Monday Night Football doubleheader and the college football slate from this weekend. You can catch that wherever you get your podcast or right here as soon as we get done on YouTube. A little bit of housekeeping. The poll that we put up before at GoJo and Golic on Twitter, is Sam Darnold a ginger? 72.9% of the 1,205 votes said yes. So I'm sorry, Jesse. Unfortunately, you're wrong about the color of Sam Darnold's hair, but we can all be right and rejoice about the one shared color black that we all decided to wear this morning without telling each other. And two, apparently what our buddy Emerson Lazio was up to with a bunch of dogs down in Nashville. I have no idea what to expect here, but a little tease of what we've got coming up from him on the pregame power-up later on. Take a look. Oh, it's a race.
Yeah, it's...
Oh, my God. It's a little wiener dog race.
It's a little wiener dog race, which is combining Emerson's two favorite things, dogs and hot dogs. So, amazing.
Oh, look at the little short leggers.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so...
I did like seeing the various things that they use to entice the dogs over to the finish line. I think I saw a lamb chop doll over there. It's always interesting what every dog latches onto that's your thing that you know when you got to get bleep done, that's the go-to toy.
My dog would have stopped and pooped. That would have been my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one just straight for the one that won just went straight for the finish line right there. No dilly-dally.
Sure did. Yeah, that was a significant win.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
I love the
cool.
little lowriders too. Wiener dog race is up there. Like we've been at a lot of sporting events, Dad. Back when we lived in Connecticut, the Yard Goats game, they used to do baby races that we would gamble on in the crowd all the time, which was fun. Wiener dogs just as unpredictable though. Anything with the short, stubby appendages like babies or small dogs definitely I think makes for the best racing fair.
Jesse, there was nothing like a bunch of guys at a minor league baseball game and babies going to race and cash coming out of pockets, laying them on a certain baby to win. I mean, that was the epitome. That there's a lot of beer being drank as well, which certainly adds to it. But betting on babies may be a bit of a low.
What were you looking for out of those babies? I mean, what was making you put your money down on said baby?
Honestly, just some want to. You can tell the look in a baby's eyes. Jesse, you're a mom. I don't have to explain this to you. You know the look in your son or daughter's eyes when you realize that they've got their game face on and they're ready to crawl at speeds unbeknownst to mankind.
When mom is holding the baby, is the baby kind of moving, wanting to get down, or is the baby just, fine being held? I mean, there's little idiosyncrasies like that you try and the true gamblers like Mike and I pick up.
Okay, wow.
It's like amazing. The horses in the stable before they go out there for like the Preakness. When you see one of them losing its mind in there, it's like that horse. Yeah. That horse is ready to run a race right now. Not complacent, earn not given. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Jesse, let's get to that and talk about what we saw over the weekend of the WNBA. The playoffs certainly getting started. We can get you some of those results, but hardware handed out deservedly so to the one and only A'ja Wilson.
Yeah, A'ja Wilson was named the 2024 WNBA MVP in unanimous fashion. Unreal. It's the third MVP award for Wilson. So she's tied now for most all-time with Cheryl Swoops, Lisa Leslie, and Lauren Jackson. Now, Wilson won in 2020 and 2022. She received all 67 first-place votes from the media panel, making her the first unanimous MVP since Cynthia Cooper in the league's inaugural season in 1997. So we all knew it was coming, but here we are.
Yeah, that's where everybody was playing for second, right? Everybody was playing for second. And by the way, second was Nafisa Collier. She finished second from the Minnesota Lynx. Brianna Stewart was third. Caitlin Clark finished fourth, while Alyssa Thomas from the Sun, Connecticut, finished fifth. So that rounded out the top five. But this was, everybody was fighting for second, third, fourth, and fifth in this one.
No doubt about it. So great to see the celebration for a player in A'ja Wilson that has been this great for this long. We mentioned the added eyes on their team this season because of all the added eyes on the sport. And for A'ja Wilson, had to feel nice, too, to go out and cap it with a dub as they get started the first round of the WNBA playoffs going on right now. Dad, they get a 78-67 win over the Storm in the first round of that game there. The Minnesota Lynx and Nafisa Collier, who you mentioned, get a 102-95 win over the Mercury. And the Sun go out there and beat the brakes off of Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever outfit there, 93-69 in that game. The Liberty, other team, getting the win in the first round over the Atlanta Dream. But, Dad, tough first outing in the playoffs for Caitlin Clark and that Fever squad.
Yeah, it's good that the Fever squad made it. They hadn't made it in so long. They led by her. They made the playoffs. I think nobody expected them to beat the Sun, but it's a step. It's the old arrow pointing up on the team, right? I mean, it's a positive step for them.
Certainly, Alyssa Thomas goes off with a triple-double there, her fourth career playoff triple-double in the winning effort for the Connecticut Sun. So, unsurprising result there. We'll see if they can bounce back as we're just getting started in what should be a really competitive WNBA playoff stretch. But, Jesse, let's finish this off with the third here.
Yeah.
It hasn't been great for the White Sox right now. It got even sadder over this weekend, but there is one shining, glimmering ray of hope in this entire operation.
Yeah, when things are really in the toilet for the team, you can always count on Gen Z and the social media team. I just know this is a Gen Zer. Finding fun, I guess, on the internet. It's kind of like if you don't want to cry, so you just got to laugh. Okay, so the social team posted this meme on Twitter. As you can see, it says, post final score, literally anything else. And then it has the swerving car swerving off the highway, that being the admin. And they followed up with a couple more after that. Like, they just kept it going. They didn't want to post the final score, so they posted, final can be found on the MLB app. And then they followed that one up with, final, the number of runs we scored was not greater than the number of runs they scored. So, like, the hysterical tweets just kept coming, and people were loving it on the interwebs, okay? Which is like, you got to distract them from the fact that all they're doing is losing.
I mean, you have to laugh or you're going to cry, right?
Exactly.
I mean, they're 53 and a half games out of first place of the Guardians. 53. The next closest as far as blanked out is the Rockies, 33 out. They got swept in 24 series. 24 series swept. The next closest was the Marlins at 11. I mean, it is a resounding new low that they are falling into right now. It has been absolutely brutal.
This weekend, they had a 2-1 lead in the bottom of the eighth against the San Diego Padres. Ultimately went on to lose that one, making it their 120th loss, tying the post-1900 record set by the 1962 expansion New York Mets. So not a great time around there. And Jesse, I'm with you. This is why you need to, one, you always need to pay these people well, but the social media admins, the sports information directors, the support staff in your building, you need to pay them because they do important jobs day to day around the team that help both the media coverage of the team, the operation of the day-to-day locker room fair, all these things, but especially the people who are a part of the way that you face the nation. And your social media account, right, wrong, or indifferent in 2024, that's a big part of that. And so having an admin with a little sense of humor that's also been given some license to go out here, because those players are miserable. Everyone in the building's miserable. And so if you can at least distract your fan base a little bit of candy, everybody deserves a little bit of candy at work. And the White Sox realizing that now. Love that for them.
Love to see it.
By the way, the record for most losses is held 1899. The Cleveland Spiders were 20-134.
Ooh.
Ooh,
Wish they bet they
Not
wish they had Twitter to distract their fan base.
Yeah. I wonder what their admin would have said. I wonder what you all will say as you download, subscribe, rate, and review this show and leave it a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
a ginger.